Hi, y'all. Can you hear me? Yeah. Good? All right. I'm going to hit time, and we'll go. Well, first off, Cable, thank you. That was a great intro. Really stoked to be here, really honored to be here. Thank you to my new friends at Cornish. This is really exciting. Our first time in Seattle. I'm here with my partner, Else, and we're just having a great time. So again, thank you. I likely have way too many slides. I'm going to move fast. We're going to do a Q&A at the end, so looking forward to that. But during the presentation, feel free to interrupt. Just ask a question, interrupt me if you feel so. All right, today is the 24th. I'll jump right in. So let's see, what else? I hail from New Jersey originally. I've been in Chicago for about 17 years, which is a long time, but it's been fruitful. I went to SAIC and then stayed to do some opportunities there. Been teaching for a while, East Coaster at heart, but been in the Midwest a long time. I was at University of Michigan before that. I put it on 45 seconds. That was silly. It's going great. All right, let's see, is it gonna work? It's gonna work, all right. So I'm gonna show you a lot of work. It's mostly sculpture-oriented, object-oriented. Some of it is kind of old-ish, like for instance, this is Chip, and this series for me started in 2010, which, not that long ago, but also a bit ago. But some ideas just kind of don't go away. So between 2010 and 2009, the Chip has survived, and I'm still having a good time with Chip. So Chip is my first cast bronze simulacra of like a found object or like a ordinary subject. So wavy, ruffled chip, cast bronze, painted to look real. So that is the trompe technique that was spoken about in the intro there. So getting into paint. So I arrived at sculpture as a painter, and I still kind of wear that hat a bit. So chip, cast bronze, and then I like this interruption of the wall, like it's stuck in the wall. So it's kind of suggesting that it may be coming in or out of the wall. And I like wall as surface on which we do suspend disbelief, and we do think about fields of image, fields of color, but then kind of like jabbing it with this chip was a nice interruption. And so kind of coming from that kind of changed things for me, and this is coming out of MFA. Soon after that came these two sculptures, Incognito on my right, and then Clyde on the left. And cast bronze potatoes on top of a Budweiser can painted to look like Modelo can, and then cast bronze pretzels welded together and painted to look like pretzel rods kept together with hot glue. And these are part of an exhibition called Close Company, and Clyde became that thing in the room that became a companion. Soon after that, I was making grease faces. Grease faces it's a simulacra of a used pizza box found on a dirty Chicago street, made of steel and aluminum, painted to look like a greasy pizza box, and then added some cast bronze thumbtacks and a found hubcap ring. So for me, this was a nice marriage of a different language, like found object in a simulacra, the paint, the raw material, and then putting those together to make this kind of crude portraiture. 2015, I was invited to be in a show called Small Sculpture, and that opened a lot of doors for me. Up to this point, I was like out of grad school, and I was thinking about like how to like be part of this art world thing. I was like lucky enough to get a gallery in Chicago that was pretty good, and all that was like really confusing and a steep learning curve. But I had this opportunity to do something small, and I found a lot of power in a miniature. And so in this, the image on the right, there's kind of like bleachers set up, and there was a bunch of objects. It was a group show, but I hung this miniature piñata, and then that kind of just hung over the rest of the surface. And there was something about the scale shift, and I learned from that the audience responds to the miniature in their own way, and it really puts their body into understanding of this object. And I really kind of relished that sort of agency in them, and then in this like throwing this like miniature into the world, so piñata. And also, oh, here's the raw pinata. This is version 2, and it's steel, and so it's sheets of 20 gauge mild steel, kind of almost all the way cut through with Beverly shear, and then kind of manipulated with tools, and then you got a little horsey donkey pinata guy. And then hand painted. In that show also was ceiling fan, and so this is a miniature ceiling fan that hangs above your head, equipped with pool ladder, potted plant, and blanket. And so for me, this was like another way for the audience to see something small, and then like, I think with small comes cute, but it also comes like perspective and distance. And so I really like the idea of this ceiling fan being understood as like really far away, right? So maybe it's like up here, a few more feet, but then you can understand it as like far away. And then it's this invitation to climb up and to depart from where you are. So this is some sort of like oasis on some ceiling fan blades. Some details. Steel and like wood pot. Everything else is painted steel. Similar but different, we have a miniature Martin house coming out of a life-size simulacra of a banana peel that's like aging on the floor. So I liked, and this lives on the floor. You can picture it on the floor. I like this multi inhabitant dwelling with squirrel guard on top of banana peel, which is like inherently the most provocative rind I guess we could have. And then of course it like has different things, right? And like one of them is slippery, right? One of the connotations of banana peel, slippery. So slippery foundation for these little birdies. Sticking with the miniature, I did a show in a Mies van der Rohe building. The famous architect has some residential buildings in Chicago, and this gallery kind of had one of these residential units, and they would put on shows. And so I replicated the windows of that apartment and fashioned it with similar Venetian blinds and some objects, those objects being a bird of paradise, some replica of objects that are in the Art Institute of Chicago, which is a museum, kind of like set the mood, and some details of this little table with some objects, a little cat looking out, again, companion, bird of paradise, and then a slippery banana peel, little cast bronze thing on the ledge there. And this whole show was largely founded on this pool, right? This pool that you could see outside the windows. So we're on the 6th floor, I believe, and then outside the windows is this pool, and you can kind of just see it, and this is autumn, and the pool is empty, similar to this. And I like this idea of like the pool being like a portal. Like water inherently is like in mythology, this like thing you transcend, you go somewhere else, right? And so I like pool as that portal plane. So this is an object replica of this pool that's on the wall, and it has these miniature cut maple leaves. Yeah, little paper maple leaves, and this little Nerf football, and this little pineapple. And I like this idea of this moment for the viewer thinking about shattering the windows and jumping into this pool, right? So it's in a way, it's like dark, but I also think there's this like, in a way, it's a memento mori, right? So it's about transcending somewhere else and this invitation to depart. Similarly, we have this diving board on top of a ladder going through storefront awning equipped with miniature pineapples. So this was all in that one show. Sticking with the miniature, this is the gallery that I was working with in Chicago that doesn't exist anymore. They were called Campbell Gallery, and they were a good thing. And they moved to different gallery, like brick and mortars. And so this is the last one. It's quite nice, large gallery, bow truss, 4,000 square feet, whatever. But if they're like, hey, let's do a show, and I'm like, yes, I want to do a show, obviously. But then it's like, how do you fill these walls? How do you fill this floor? How do you put on an exhibition as a poor artist in this like really big space? And so this opportunity became kind of like tricky. And I had been like really infatuated with the miniature still. This is 2016. And I thought about these ceilings. And so I made 9 ceilings that hung from the ceiling in a grid, 3x3. And they replicated different establishments. So the idea is that the viewing audience could walk through, be in this space, and be looking up and imagine being in these different locations. So some different angles of the install. And these ceilings are, I'm geeky on materials. I don't know if y'all are, but just to be like transparent, there are sheets of aluminum that are lined with cork that are then lined with laser cut paper that receive hung images and hung objects and are lit with like these LEDs. And it's a fun world to dive into, like these little LED thingies. There's a lot there. But like 3D print, a lot of these objects are 3D printed and then painted, and I was kind of new to 3D printing, and so that was a really good time. Open source is cool, just going out and finding what people have scanned and are willing to share, and then you can collage that into your own thing. And so this is ceiling water sports. I often do like a title with a parenthetical, so they're all called ceiling and then water sports. This is ceiling club. Ceiling video rental. My smart friend came to the show, and I was walking through with him, and he was like, bookstore. And I'm like, dude, no, video rental. Bookstores, they'll last longer. Are there video rental stores? I don't think so. Ceiling grocery. Thank you. I appreciate you. Yeah, it's fine. Thank you. This one kind of operated differently than the rest because it's like less contextual, right? It has less visual information, that it's about a specific place with specific purpose and content, and so it's called ceiling whole, and it's equipped with a missing drop ceiling tile and a surveillance camera and an exit sign. Continuing with the miniature, small scale, I was invited to be part of a group show at Carrie Seacrest Gallery, that's also in Chicago, and they were occupying this like luxury penthouse in this new high-rise that they had trouble selling the units, and they gave it to a gallery to like do stuff in. It's kind of cool. And so they gave me a lot of like this big living room to like build these walls in and like do this thing. And so I made these inserts, which are architectural details that get inserted into these custom-built walls. So here's some install shots. The architectural spaces for me are a bit archetypal, and so we're looking at attic and basement, and we'll see details of those. You saw the piece from the other show. This is a kind of like a remake, so I made two. I usually make two of a thing because I'm probably gonna mess one up, so when you have a deadline, you can't mess up, right? So that's the duplicate. And then we have a window with an orange interior, and that orange interior is equipped with miniature like muffin fans that you would find in a computer, and so there's this breeze coming out from the wall that blows these curtains. We have a quintessential Chicago apartment door, kind of based on Milwaukee Avenue and Wicker Park, that would go up to a space like Level 3 or Heaven Gallery that's lit up there in the middle. And then we have this like rupture in the wall, some sort of like breakage that leads to this green hallway, outside of which is this miniature AED, this thing that wakes us up from being unconscious that arguably can save a life. In that green hallway, we have some carpet that leads to a beaded curtain. And I got infatuated with beaded curtain as threshold beyond which something interesting happens, right? And so these miniature beaded curtains that turn a corner, like we don't really know what's up with that. And I think that's an interesting place to put a viewing audience. Again, asking the viewing audience to think about their body and shrinking and going inside and then transcending and maybe never coming out. Right? So green hallway, and I don't know if you can see it, but there's some little footsteps and some dust. Window with the breeze. Here it is in action. And then entrance, the stairwell going up to residential units that has a little poem on it that says, "Carrier, my bird, if you hold all that is good, knock boldly." A little nod to our mail carriers. Leads up to a blue door, ajar. This is attic. Attic has some more of like a kind of like a steeple architecture to it, with some raw wood, with some windows, with a little pendant lamp, and a skinless like Zeppelin glider, with some dynamite, with the detonator, with the crow. I like this idea of flying out of this spot, out of this place, by blowing the roof off. And it's metaphoric because there's no skin on this hang glider, right? But we're going anyway. Yeah. I think it's good to embrace these dark curiosities. I don't see, like, again, confusing to be part of a world where it's like, all right, cool, make your art, but also like, we got to sell it, so like, it can't be too weird. And I think don't let that get in your head. Be weird, first and foremost. Yeah, and so I had a really good time pushing the limits with these. So this is like stainless steel and wood and a lot of 3D print, a lot of painted 3D print. A nice mashup of like materials, like there's a lot of different things in here, and that's a good time for me. So attic, and then this is cellar. Cellars suggest underneath some stairs, and for me those stairs are like the front entrance to a house. So this would be like a basement, kind of underneath exterior stairs. That's like where my head's at with it. So it shows some foundation, and it shows some timbers, and then there's like some dirt and gravel. And then there's this horse head lamp, and then there's a hole in the ground with a rope going into it with a shovel adjacent, again, suggesting that you could go, or you could come. All right. So, in addition to miniature stuff, I'm interested in a collection of small things, IRL size, right? And so I started making these keychains that I call tokens, that for me, the keychain is a thing that we represent ourselves with, right? It's an extension of our body. It shows like how we live our life and like what we have access to. And so I thought it was a fun place to get poetic and to mash up some objects. So again, I was messing with the wall. Again, this wall is this thing that we just place some art on and then we engage, and all that's like quite natural for an audience, right? They just stand in front of stuff and they do it. They know what to do with the wall, but they don't think about it, right? But then if you stab the wall with a key and you're like, I'm gonna open the wall, again, this request to use, to go through as a threshold somewhere else. This is a bit of how some of these elements are made. So I do some cast metal stuff in the studio, and these are sand molds that are for like jewelry size casting. And so I have electric furnace, and I melt some bronze, melt some aluminum, and do some custom casting. What's fun about the sand molds is that they're all one-offs. They're all like monotypes, right? It's hard to get it exactly the same because you have some error, and there's like something lovely about the error in this process. And it's all like kind of fast. You can cast these keys in a day. So I was making these keychains. I was going to the Art Institute. I was using my phone with 123D Catch and scanning some artifacts and like 3D printing them. And I thought that was like a fun way to talk about mythology and replicating keys in both metal and wood. So here we're looking at like 3D prints, some cast aluminum, some carved wood with some found hardware. And then they got like a little bit bigger, right? So still like finding a way to access the wall, but like kind of getting a bit more secure in that wall. So adding like a lock to the wall, like a little deadbolt entrance. And then like having fun with these like coils and cast aluminum, and getting a little tongue in cheek with some like replicating art history. So we have Joseph Boy's Fat Chair. I feel like I haven't said his name out loud in a while. Joseph Boy's Fat Chair, little lanyard from the Bermuda Triangle. So a little tongue-in-cheek. It was fun for me. So, keychains, and this one has kind companion with the potato with some eyeballs. It has Brancusi's endless column, lanyard with the stars. I had an opportunity to do a show at the Museum of Contemporary Art, Chicago, MCA Chicago. They do this program called Chicago Works, and they tend to change the title of it, so it's probably called something else now. But I was invited to do a show, and it was fun. I made a keychain for that. They have this really grand stairwell. It's kind of like this spiraling stairwell that's quite iconic to the building, and I was allowed to like engage that. And so I went through their archive. It's all public. You can do this too. Of they have a collection. So I picked out sculptors or sculpture by artists that were influential to me, and also I just thought were like worth celebrating. And so I replicated some elements from their collection, and this is also equipped with other objects. So off keel here we have like a Sanford Bigger's Cloud, Solowit Cube, H.C. Westerman, Isa Genskin, Klaus Oldenburg, Simon Starling, Richard Rezac, who's like longtime Chicago artist, Joseph Beuys, etc. Robert Morris, names. Keeping with the token thing, suspending, again, from the ceiling, I mean, yes, in space, off the wall. And this is in a gallery setting, not in a museum. Playing with large elements that could be on this keychain that create a setting, right? And I'm interested in desert as this like psychological space, right? Where people go to like, I don't know, to feel far out. So I was kind of like touching on that a little bit with these replicas of cactus and trying to create like narrative with the content of the keychain. And so cacti and parrots, carved wood, cast aluminum, cast bronze, Kevlar lanyard, bat house on the go for companionship, which is the box, flashlight with mud, coin purse, alligator foot. A different token, this time engaging the hotel as interesting site. So this is a hotel door with a bunch of stuff. And so it's like a milled aluminum handle with a do not disturb sign. The narrative here is, the title of this piece is called Token Wrong Room, Dawn Looms. A bit about just not making it back inside. Here we have a lipstick key fob carved out of brass, some cast bronze keys. We have a matchbook that is bronze that has a room number in it that's smudged out. We have some pepper spray and a coin purse and a broken flip-flop. Yeah, so currently working on a very large keychain that's going to go into a collector's house. They took down their chandelier and they're going to put up a giant keychain, which I'm pretty stoked on. It's been so much work and I'm very close to being done. I'm so late. But it's going to be about 20 feet long. And I was hoping to have all that stuff documented and show it to y'all. I was really excited. This was like encouragement to me, but I just couldn't get done. So it's still going. And take a look on Insta. That'll be on there hopefully in 2 weeks. That's the plan. So tokens. I've also been messing with safety devices, specifically fire extinguishers and defibrillators. We saw the defibrillator earlier. How are we doing on time? And I liked it as, I like safety device as site for error, right? Or this like moment of choice, right? Like, do I save the day? Or like, do we get distracted by things? So this particular fire extinguisher is buried in sand. Some of these cases for fire extinguishers come with, like in case of emergency, break the glass, and they have a device or a little thing to break the glass. And so that device has a banana hanging from it. And then on top is this ice bag, right? So for me, it's like a mashup of items that could mean this or that at this site. creating a surreal object and a confusing moment. This is an AED or defibrillator, that thing that shocks our hearts start, with a cactus blade going through it. Carved wood, kind of simple gesture. Sometimes the reduction feels right. Some details. So arriving at the thing that could wake us up, but there's some sort of hindrance there that is perhaps like a do not touch, or maybe it's an invitation to do something else. This is freestanding fire extinguisher. It's called Buttle Muddled. And for me, the configuration of this, the form, the standing fire extinguisher with this shelf of glass holding what looks like a beverage, is very much like being served, or like something that is like keeping you going, being buttled. And then muddled speaks to how we make a cocktail. And this particular cocktail is indeed liquid. It's a store-bought glass from Crate and Barrel, and it has whiskey, kerosene, and hydraulic fluid, and together looks like a cocktail. So it's for me, the whiskey is, again, it's like, do we just like sit back and watch? Do we throw fuel on a fire? Are we like using the hydraulic fluid to do something to this hose? And it comes with a scar. And it's on top of this blue disc that's this, it's an acronym. I'm not going to get it right now. It's some sort of like polyethylene that's super slippery, right? So I like this idea of it just like moving. I guess we all have this understanding that things are stationary, right? But really, we're like vibrating. I like this idea of this disc like always just like moving in space. So again, a little slippery foundation. And I had been using safety glass for these other bodies of work. I really like that wire glass. You guys have some nice wire glass in this building. You have the square, vertical, horizontal orientation glass, and there's a term for that I'm forgetting. It's not made in the States anymore. It actually has to come from China, I believe. Anyway, that's a whole different conversation about economy. Back to the defibrillator and back to cacti, going a little bit further with the woodwork, which was fun for me. So we can imagine making a rectilinear sort of box, and then like carving wood to be like organic. And then for me, I think the fun part was like steam bending this wood to be like the strap, right? So getting kind of like loosey-goosey. And there is something about simulation. I think I often forget in making these objects that it's largely about the audience not understanding what they're looking at. And then with the recognition of this being some sort of simulation, it kind of changes their understanding of like their own, existence in the world, I mean, hopefully. And so that's fun for me. And I think when we play with like soft, like hard and soft, there's a surprise level there that can be effective. Oh, yeah, Gentle Sting. That's the title. I added some titles, so you might see some titles up there. So in addition to trying to be conceptual and poetic with this content, with these subjects, I really was longing for something to do something like quickly and to engage like composition and form. And I started playing with toothpicks as a way to like build and create this like composition, this form. And for me, that was a lot about like balance and being in touch with these other instincts to make art, but keeping it within a language I was building already, which is like this simulacra trompe l'oeil thing. So these toothpicks are fashioned out of steel, and then I use like a welding process to like weld them together. And the idea is that they come out of this champagne cork, right? And that's cast bronze on top of aluminum Post-it notes. So for me, I call them mnemonics as a memory device, because for me it was kind of about like remembering this instinct to like make stuff, and that form alone can influence our understanding of space and of our existence in collaboration with objects. So it's kind of a dance. I have fun with these. I haven't made the toothpick ones in a bit, but it's quite different than where I'm at now, and I'll get there. So I switched from toothpick to making them out of pretzel rods, which are cast bronze that get welded together and then get painted to, resemble specifically rolled gold. I don't know if y'all like pretzels, but these are modeled after rolled gold. That reason is because of the anatomy of that pretzel. They have these little tips. So next, go to the store, get some rolled golds, note the tips. They're nice. And I've had some people help me in the studio, and they can tell you how crazy I am about the tips. Sometimes you can you really got to celebrate the tips. All right, so mnemonic in pretzel form. So this is larger, so those toothpick ones end up being like this big, whereas these are about that big, but less units doing something gesturally in space. So it's a different dance. And the paint on these is much more elaborate. If you're geeky about that stuff, it's like 4 different browns that are like airbrushed, and then the broken ends are like an off-white, and then all the salt gets painted by hand, like little dots of off-white. So it's a slow thing, but I think there's a beauty to it. There's something about that particular palette, and like if we might have some detail shots that are kind of animal, they're kind of like doe, deer sort of hide. So I like the kind of push to something that's not pretzel, not human, its own sort of abstract beast. And abstraction is something I guess I should be talking about, because these are inherently abstract sculptures, right? Like you have a Calder down in the sculpture garden I saw from the Space Needle last night. That's cool. And then these are abstractions, but they're also really rooted in realism. And that's, for me, I always had this narrative going on where it's like, I want to be that, but I'm not. And so I'm trying to get there, but it's still, again, rooted in something else. So kind of like that Budweiser can, trying to be a Modelo can, but clearly it's still a Budweiser can. Yeah. So these are also mnemonics. A little detail there. I had the opportunity to go big. And so I was casting all this bronze in the studio. I could cast about 9 pretzels a day. If I did nothing else besides pretzels, 9 pretzels a day. And that's like making molds, casting the wax, getting them ready for bronze casting the bronze, cleaning up the bronze, welding the bronze, all that, right? It's a fair amount of work. But then I had this opportunity to make 2 large ones. And so this one is about my height, and it's about 800 pretzels, and it resides downtown Chicago in a law office. And so some lawyers thought they wanted to represent themselves in their front lobby with a bunch of pretzels, and I thought that was awesome. And it was really fun for me to think about dancing a bit bigger, and how the pretzel rod and that unit acts more like the toothpick at this scale. I also like it becoming bigger than a human body, and thinking about this thing, this monster, this object, this thing in a room. It occupies space a lot differently. This is a detail of all those coming together. So the idea is that it's welded together, so you can picture like a little weld, and then that weld gets covered with an epoxy material that looks like chewing gum. And so I pigment some epoxy putty, put those over the weld. So it suggests this is like an assemblage of real pretzels and gum as the adhesive. And I like the precariousness that comes with that. Like if you touch it wrong or move too quickly or go up the stairs next to it too quickly, it could all come down. Simultaneously, I was invited to be part of the Chicago Architecture Biennial in 2023, and so that was right at the same time as making the law office one. And so this one's a bit bigger. This one's about a little over 7 feet, and it has about 1,300 parts. And it was in really good company within the Architecture Biennial. So this beautiful space. It was quite nice. I should say that I like, are the titles up here? So I've been having more fun with titles, and so this fits into the mnemonic series. Offhand, this one is titled Mnemonic Optimism Stretches and Yawns, Looks East, with one hand covers its eyes from the morning sun, and with the other greets its neighbor, something like that, which ended up being too long for the catalog, so they ended up leaving it out, which is fun in a way. The other one that I showed you at the law office is called Mnemonic. The trap setter is so good at setting her traps that that which she seeks to trap too frequently gets trapped, and she exclaims, "Hey, you, get out of my trap." So in addition to pretzels, I'm also interested in some other carbs. I'm interested in baguettes and loaves of bread. And I really like this idea of this gesture of like filling some door handles with some baguettes, right? And this, like you can see, they're floppy, right? They're not a good hindrance, but collectively maybe if 13 baguettes are in there, it's going to keep something in or it's going to keep something out, right? And you can imagine that door opening and that bread breaking. And I like this play on language of like breaking bread, but it also comes from this like quick, frivolous attempt to like barricade. And so this one's called To Come or To Go. And this one's called With a Little Give and With a Little Take. These two pieces led to doing a exhibition at Ackerman Clarke in Chicago, where I had some different door handles with different carbs. So this one's called Roped, and you can see it's a pretzel. The pretzel game in Chicago is pretty good. So this is from a German restaurant that I like. And their cast is cast gypsum and aluminum. Aluminum is milled; it's not cast. And then the bread becomes the door. So I switch, and it's no longer barricading or keeping something in or keeping something out. It's actually the door itself, and this is called The Space Between. And this one's called Corset. I have some video, so I'm gonna go fast. I got 10 minutes. So this is a piece called Garage Door. Right, so Garage Door was, it's an oldie, but it's, again, sticking with me, and I just resurfaced it and decided to share it, and, oh, where am I? What did I do? Does that work? And then down. So Garage Door was largely about taking something that we're familiar with, extracting it from its usual context, and just displaying it. But again, this portal that is like an invitation, but it doesn't necessarily go anywhere obvious. And then this is a piece called Potato. So Potato does what you see. It slides on the wall, and it goes from left to right. And this one's installed at the Museum of Contemporary Art Chicago. And it's actually quite involved. It's a cast potato that relates through the wall to a mechanical system inside the wall. And so we built this large custom wall. It's about 25 feet by 3 feet deep by 12 feet up, all to house the mechanics for this. And for me, the idea is that if a potato is able to do this in a gallery setting, then like anything's possible. And again, it's asking the audience to suspend disbelief, and that gives the agency to everything else in the room. For me, potato is really important. Let's move on. Let's see. Oop. Yeah, let's get back to that. Did I do it right? This is called Cinnamon Scent Machine 2. It's a remake from something from a while ago, and it's a kinetic sculpture that hangs from the ceiling inside the basketball, which is a found object. It's another found object, the orbital sander, and that intermittently turns on, and it sands these oversized cinnamon sticks, and it's like quite aggressive and creates a mess, and it's very loud, and ultimately you smell cinnamon. I have never shown this in like a solo exhibition. Like I would love to do a room of these. It's quite a ruckus, but it's always been in group shows, and either like people love it or absolutely hate it because it's quite loud and it's quite messy and it's dust and it's around other art. So Cinnamon Scent Machine. This is a piece called Pan Pan. It's a cast pumpkin in gypsum equipped with a windshield wiper motor rear that reciprocates out, that attaches to a windshield wiper arm, and then there's a shirt sleeve. This is a white shirt sleeve found, dismembered from its rest of the shirt, and then there's a cufflink that then gets slammed on the ground. Again, creating some sort of like surreal. I like the mashup of like it becoming a body, it being someone that needs help. Maybe it's a signal for help, but it's also this like act of taking this cufflink which is inherently like masculine attire, and just like slamming it on the floor until something gives. There's more, I swear. There we go. So I'm going to move quite quick, getting into small cast objects again, making some matchbooks. So I started making these matchbooks for an opportunity in Chicago called Raleigh Fair, which is a miniature art fair, and I replicated made some matchbooks that represent different things that were important to me. So this is Small's Jazz Club, in Manhattan. And in high school, they would like let us in, and like we'd see jazz and like do things we weren't supposed to be doing as like teenagers, and it was really fun. And so it was a good coming of age thing. So Small's Jazz Club, Cobra Lounge. Peace. I think something is happening here with this one where like we know it's a peace sign, but we don't know it's a peace sign. And I think it's an interesting subject to be like questioning in a really simple gesture. So I think this one operates pretty well. They're all called sconces as like wall-bound light source with like reflective thing. And so this is sconce vanity, and then sconce smalls, etc. So again, like vanity, we have a mirror, but also reflective surface from which like light would bounce. And this is sconce with a view. So like these little paintings, they're mostly hand painted, some with a little stencil that I custom make, but it's a really good time to like make little paintings on sculpture. So I have a lot of fun with it. These are more recent. This is last year, and this is sconce with a dark space. So this is cave entrance, cellar door, covered bridge. And most recently, I've been making some sconces that are reminiscent of moth patterns. And so I did a show recently that was largely about moths and as bat food, and a bat in a room, and a candle in a window that attracts said moth. So this is sconce cecropia, garden tiger, Madagascar bullseye, false tiger, cecropia again. So I like these ideas of this becoming animal, and inherently there's this power, right, to like light on fire, which is also would be like more of like a phoenix moment for the moth. And that was part of the show. So you can see the dots in the background on the wall. Those are the matchbooks that you just saw. And then hanging from the ceiling, we have some bat houses. And so they're pizza boxes with the anatomy of a bat house. So it has a slit for light, the bottoms are open. This idea that we could invite or have bats in the room. More install shots. So the pizza boxes are fashioned out of steel similar to the grease faces. So this is like a different take on it. And so it becomes housing, right? And so we have candle in the window. We have Venice Canal. These are really fun for me because like I don't draw that much, and these are more drawings than they are paintings. And so the red ones are actually like transfer, like carbon paper, red carbon paper with a little water. It was like a lot of fun for me. And these are photographs that I took in Venice years ago, redone into these bat houses. So we have bat house oven, bat house above the bridge. And we have this piece called Calling, which is a miniature window, double-hung window with a miniature candle in it that's lit, that's made of brass with this pool ladder hanging inside this very large bandsaw blade. And the bandsaw blade is attached to a reciprocating mechanical system on a ceiling, and so it bounces around. I see it as something that keeps a beat, that has a song, that is some sort of invitation, like a siren, but is also inherently like a trap, like has jagged edges, it's moving around, it's designed to cut. And the candle in the window is that like cabin in the woods with a glowing light in the window that's like, that speaks to like being welcome and hospitality and safety. Also, part of that show is this pumpkin on the ceiling that blends right in with this beautiful ceiling. It's cast gypsum, and it's called Bat, Out for the Night. And so it's cast gypsum with a spritz of Glacier U perfume. Thank you. I think we did pretty good on time. Yeah. Hey, thanks, guys. That was fun for me. Do we just jump into questions? Yeah. No bad questions. Yeah. Hand raise? Yeah. Please.
One comment before I start with the question. I really like how all your pieces are kind of the window space kind of feeling. That's what I got from it.
Yeah.
So like there's nothing yet there is something, which is really cool.
I like that. Thank you.
So my question is, what is the strangest piece that you've ever made?
I go to this piece that I didn't include that was in MCA Chicago. I go there because the curator was like icked out by it. And he's like, this is really weird, Chris. But he's like actually like really open to all that stuff. Anyway, so Joey it would say hand truck, like a dolly that you would move boxes with, that was like cut up and flipped to become a valet chair, which is like the thing that's also like associated with like menswear. It's this thing that you would hang like ties and belts and a jacket on as a seat. It was like metal and tubular, and I made a tie and a belt out of steel, and it was just kind of eerie. Yeah, there's that. I'm sure there's more. I've done some weird stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that, but I could keep going. Yeah, sure. Yes. Hi.
What were your most memorable reaction from the collective audience or the people you know, and how do you feel?
There's a duality there, right? So it's like it's always good to get a good reaction, but sometimes people like don't have good reactions. So I have both in terms of being memorable, right? I think when people really receive it and they do their own thing with it, and you can see that it's like working in a way, and I want it to be contemplative. I want it to elicit, like a lot of it for me is some sort of humor. So I do want it to elicit some sort of like fun reaction or a smile or some sort of like thinking about things differently. I think that's always rewarding, and I've seen that, and that feels good. I've also had people just like not really give it a chance and like verbally out loud say mean things, like I've received that, And I don't know, I guess to each their own, that's okay. There's a risk to being an artist and putting things into the world, and that's part of the risk, is that it might not be a good experience for everybody, you know. Another question? Yes, please.
So you mentioned that you started as a painter and
Mm.
then moved into sculpture. What kind of drew you to sculpture, sculpture students? And what kind of paintings did you make before you moved into that?
Yeah, thanks. I was a really bad painting student. I didn't want to learn. I just wanted to do, and I never really learned how to paint. I just made paintings. And I was really called to like material painting, like Anselm Kiefer, things that are like very large and like visceral, and there's just so much going on there. And I was trying to make paintings that were reminiscent of that. And I was really curious about how to make objects. Like I grew up being quite hands-on, building stuff with my dad and my brother, but like not really learning that much, just like, again, doing it. And then I got into like fine woodwork, and it kind of just got me intrigued about skill, being able to do stuff. And I feel like putting objects into the world and trying to explore ideas through objects is still really hard and complicated. And I don't think people know what to do with it as easily as they do with an image on a wall or an image in a book, or with words. I think object relationship is obviously really common because we've got all these things that were so normal to us, but then if you get conceptual with it, it gets like hard, it's difficult. So I stick with the sculpture because I find it really challenging, and I've tried to develop a language in it, and I don't know how to be a painter. That's the reality of it. It's like being too tall to fit in the doorway or something, but I just don't happen to be tall. But yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Some paintings that I was making these replications. This is like maybe first trompe l'oeil. I was making these large brick walls out of cardboard and joint compound and like ripped up paper. So it's very large, life-size brick walls that were like, I was really fascinated with like dilapidation and nostalgia, right? And I think that's cool to go through those moments. And I kind of like itching to get back to brick walls. Because I was making these brick wall thingies that are quite objects. Yes, please.
Three-part question.
Yeah.
Do you make models out of like pretzels and baguettes beforehand, or you replicate? And second part is, when do you find it necessary for you to make that very replica with the opera
Mm-hmm.
of the very thing you're trying to reference, or when do you find it necessary or convenient, perhaps, to use the existing object as an object? And third part is, if the difference is the question of permanence between the two, what do you do in that sense of permanence? How do you find it to be necessary, or is it necessary to be that material, like steel and bronze, vice versa?
Yeah, good questions, thanks. Sometimes make models, but often do not. I think I can like visualize something and like feel confident in that and kind of go for it. That would say that happens more often than say making a model, but depends how convenient the model making is, right? Like for instance, like gluing, if I were to do real pretzels and hot glue them together, to me that's like slower than welding them together. Like it's tricky, right? And so I don't actually do that. But then sometimes objects just like end up near another object, and I'm just like kind of slap them together. I'm like, wow, okay. And then that feeds like a departure point to like a series or something like that. Like for instance, some like cowboy boots and kickstand for a bicycle happened. That keeps coming back to me, and those are found objects that don't really exist as a work yet, but it's still like in there as like a thing I want to explore. Yeah, and then some found object I just feel like don't need to be replicated, or in their found state has more agency and potency than say replicating it. Like for instance, I keep going to bandsaw blades, and I go to hubcap rings, and then like painting over the beer can and beverage cans in general. All that, like there's something there that I want that thing to exist and be part of it. So I think the found thing can have its own poetic agency. And then permanence, I I think partially it's like part of this language that I've built that I guess to anyone that's paying attention, I'm like known for doing X, Y, and Z, and so it's a continuation of that. Like for instance, putting the perfume on the pumpkin, like that is temporary, right? And then if someone were to like become the say they lived with that pumpkin and wanted to like keep the piece going, they would intermittently spritz the pumpkin with Glossier U, right? And so it's a way to like maintain, right? And so for instance, like I could also bring a bunch of baguettes to Chase Bank and throw it in the door handles and run away. And I think that could be a piece, that could be a performance, right? And that can exist both in documentation, the memory of it, the idea of it, and also it could exist just as description on a piece of paper, right? And so I think with all those ways to recollect, it doesn't necessarily disappear, right? So it is maybe ephemeral in its materiality, but then it can be redone and redone and redone. So yeah. Thanks. Please, more. Please.
You mentioned the artist Joseph Beuys a couple of times, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how, I don't know if there's any like similarities and like, or like inspiration that you found in the way that you like apply meaning to objects and like representation.
Yeah. I think what I always admired of Beuys is like how he romanticized materials, right? And how it's like lard and fat that gets used, or it's just thick pieces of wool that get used in certain ways. And so I connected with that like visceralness in his practice. I don't think I necessarily connect and relate in a mythological way, but I always admired his pursuit and his use of materials, what he was willing to allow himself to do, or what he thought the world needed with those objects, yeah. Yes?
Chris, we have like, so when our students graduated for the Biennial show, they would have to develop a body of work
Yeah.
for our exhibition. Could you talk about how you think through like a series as an artist in the studio, and maybe what holds your attention, but also how they work over time in your studio practice?
Yeah. Some of these things have been ongoing for a long time, and what feels exciting is that like I know I'm like not nearly done with it, and I guess the artist, this is a bit of a tangent, but the artist can do the same thing over and over and over again, and it's okay. And I think a lot of beauty can be sourced there, and so the body of work could be sorry, I'm blanking on a word. Homogeneous, right? It could be like of a type, could look very similar, and you could just expound and really explore something. Or that body of work could like, each element within the body of work could look very different, and it's still of the same sort of conceptual founding. I think there's different ways to get excited about that. Are we trying to fill a room? Are we trying to conclude something? And the body of work is the collection of moments in that pursuit. Is there an opportunity associated with it? Are we just compelled to do something? I think the latter, just being compelled, is like really important, because you have to believe in the things that you're pursuing, otherwise no one else will. So you really have to just be like, this is worthwhile. I don't care if it fits in right now. So you got to just believe in those ideas. I think you can consider how you want to partake as someone making art, as someone that's sharing, because those are different things. You can make and not share. So if you do want to share, like you have 10 ideas, which ones are you gonna be able to share? Like you're not alone in that experience, and so sometimes you might get some excitement about X, Y, and Z, and then have more opportunity to put that into the world, and that could be a reason to flesh something out. And that's kind of like why some things kept going for me. And that's not to say that the other ideas that say didn't get pursued because there wasn't momentum around them. It's not to say that they weren't worth time. It's just one person can only do so much. But I think you really got to trust your gut. Don't follow the trends. Just really believe in your ideas. You can emulate, but don't necessarily like copy. You know, I think it's good to like try to find your voice in that and keep it weird. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks guys. This was fun for me.
See you around.